Now that we are officially over halfway through the Premier League season, I thought we should take a look back to the start of the season to see where the bookies predicted all 20 Premier League teams to come. I'm going to have a look at where they predicted, where they are now, have a little chat about them. I haven't got any notes. This is going to be a very relaxed style of video. We're going to go through it though, and at the end, I'll give a little overview. So lads, let's get into the video. All right then lads, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I've gone all out with the presentation. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually very happy with this. I'm not a PowerPoint guy. I've made this on PowerPoint, but there's no fancy transitions. But I like this start page. But as I said in the intro, we are just going to be having a little react to where the bookies predicted all 20 Premier League teams to come. I've been through it. There's a few surprises. As I say, though, I haven't made any notes, so I'm just going to give my thoughts on things. Very relaxed style of video. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and yeah, let's get into this. Ready? No transition. Oh, it didn't even work. Mental. All right, then. So the bookies predicted Burnley to finish in last position. And I can completely understand why. They're actually in 19th. I think if Wolves weren't as poor as they are, and no one really expected any team to be as poor as that, but I do think that Burnley will finish either 20th or 19th. I just feel as though the clubs around them too strong. Burnley's recruitment as well. I didn't like it at the start of the season. I still don't like it now. Even with a good January, I'm not sure they can actually push on and get the players in that they need to actually go on and try and stay in this league. If you look at Leeds and, of course, Sunderland, they are doing a far better job in really taking the game to teams, whereas Burnley, not as much. And I do seriously think they're lacking a goal scorer. So Burnley, bookies predicted them to come last. I don't think they'll be far from it. Now, Sunderland, this is our first big surprise. So Sunderland, bookies predicted them to finish in 19th position. Now, in terms of where I've got all this data from, I scoured the internet to actually find this. I feel as though they like to cover it up once the season actually starts. But I did find it, and it's based on about 10 of the biggest bookies, averaging out where they put them. So Sunderland in 19th place, actually sitting in 8th. What a season Sunderland have had so far. Really, really strong season from them. And I just feel like they're getting better and better, and defensively as well. So impressive. Out of these two teams from last season, if you'd have told me that Burnley and Sunderland, who would be better defensively, after the record, I'd have put Burnley 100%. But in actual fact, Sunderland, especially if you look at that Manchester City game, what a performance from them. Sunderland still, I feel as though, will begin to drop down the table slightly as other teams catch them. But I feel as though a mid-table finish, even if it was in the bottom half, great start to life back in the Premier League for them. Moving on then, we've got Wolves and Leeds in 18th and 17th. So Wolves, it's an interesting one. So the bookies predicted Wolves to get relegated, but not to be sat in 20th. So maybe a lot of people, myself included to be fair, saw this coming. You could see the decline coming down the previous seasons. And the squad of players itself, like, look at Vitinha. He's a great example, of course. He now plays for PSG, one of the best players in the world. Wolves' recruitment is clearly quite good, but being at Wolves, something just seems to be off there for me. So the fact that they've gone for them to get relegated, I think, obviously, as we know, they're last in the league. They've only just picked up their first win. I think it was actually quite an accurate one from them, where they got Sunderland completely wrong. Wolves was a great shout, because I feared as though, and we'll get to them in a minute, there was a better candidate to go down from the existing Premier League teams. So, yeah, Wolves is a good pick there. As for Leeds, of course, sat in 16th. Bookies predicted them to just stay up in 17th. I think that's nailed on. I really, really do. I can't see Leeds climbing out the table, getting into that mid-table position, sort of like into the top half. But I can see Leeds in that relegation dogfight, but surviving. I really like Leeds. I think they've got a decent set of players, a good squad. I like Daniel Farke as well. I thought he could be the problem for them here and there. But ultimately, he has been really good in terms of tweaking tactics and actually giving it a go, which credit to him, because it's very easy to just almost accept defeat when you're in that position, knowing that Daniel Farke probably went into this season thinking, at some point, I will be sacked. So fair play to him for giving it a go and tweaking things. But Leeds, yeah, I think that's a very fair prediction from the bookies, and as we can see, it's sort of transpiring here now. So credit to Leeds, defying the odds. Now then, as for West Ham, I think a lot of people, similar to the bookies, had them finishing down the table, but not sat in 18th position. I mean, West Ham with the stadium, would they be the biggest team to go down for a little while? I feel like we haven't had anyone since your Villas and Newcastles. So West Ham on the brink, really needing a quick turnaround. Of course, Nuno Espirito Santos is the manager at the moment. Is it working? It's too soon to say if it is or not, but the problem that West Ham have and the risk that they're going to have to take is if they get it wrong and ultimately they say, okay, let's give him some more time, it could go really wrong and down to the Championship they could go. They need a huge window, and I believe they've already signed. The transfer window has been a bit of a blur for me so far. There is some content coming on the transfer window though, so stick around for that. But Castellanos, however you say his name, doesn't inspire me. They were linked with Hadji Wright and Ellis Sims from Coventry City as well, which I've seen a lot of Coventry this season. I'll be honest, numbers-wise, they're two decent players, but in terms of Premier League players, that is the wrong players to go and get to keep you in this league. So Bookies pretty much got it nailed on almost there that they'd be in the relegation fight, but no one had them down to finish in the relegation zone, really. So West Ham with a lot of work to do. However, I mentioned them a minute ago, Brentford, quite the contrary. So Brentford were that team I mentioned where I said I actually had them to finish in the relegation zone and be the only team out of all of the existing teams to go down. And wow, first of all, and this is actually a bit of a public apology because I said Keith Andrews was not the guy for this. Credit where credit is due to Keith Andrews. Unbelievable from him in his first job as a manager. They're currently sat in 7th place, and if you're an XG nerd, I'm not really. I support Aston Villa. I don't know what XG is, but Keith Andrews, unbelievable in terms of the stats. Really got his team playing some nice football. You've got Thiago, who looks like a great signing. I think there was only a couple of people I actually saw say Thiago could be a good addition. One of them was actually Tom Garrett. So credit to Tom Garrett there because I don't know what anyone saw. You can do well in Belgium. He came over to England and the hype sort of died. So he's really picked it up. And ultimately they've got Atara who's doing really well. So Brentford, credit to them, completely defying the odds. And I mean, I was surprised the bookies had them so high in the first place because there was just so much sort of, Mbremo's been sold, Wiss has been sold, Thomas Frank has left the club, Norgard's left. All of these things that could have gone wrong for them, it felt like they did. But wow, have they bounced back. And I would say they're safe already, which is the only aim they could have had this season to stabilise, and they're doing more than that. So credit to Brentford there. Moving on then, we've got Fulham and Crystal Palace. Fulham doing a little bit better than they were predicted. Of course, Harrison Reed scored that absolute stunner against Liverpool in their last match to sort of bump them up the table a little bit. Fulham's an interesting one. I think they're now 5 unbeaten, which is actually really good when you look at it. The problem I've got with Fulham is that I just don't know how they're supposed to sort of move forward and move up the table. There's no real plan for that. So Marco Silva in the last year of his contract, I feel as though the bookies' prediction will come true. I do feel as though they'll fade off a little bit with Marco Silva looking like he's definitely going to be leaving in the summer. How those players will start to play for him, we'll have to see. It's very rare you see a manager actually leave a club, and it's public knowledge they're leaving. We all know they're leaving, and that group of players plays well for them. Look at Jurgen Klopp. It's the same team that played for Jurgen Klopp that did for Slot in their first season, won the league with Slot, nowhere near it with Klopp. So we'll have to see on that one there, but I think the bookies are there or thereabouts. I can't see Fulham breaking the top half. Now, moving on to Crystal Palace. This was a strange one for me because I actually looked at Palace at the start of the season and thought, why are people saying they're going to finish so low? I mean, they've got, Europa League, then, of course, Conference League, but European football shouldn't derail them that much. Look at what they were doing in the last end of the season. And again, maybe I think Palace are amazing because I'm a Villa fan. These boys have our number. But to other fan bases, I mean, let me know. Palace is such an interesting one for me. They're an established Premier League team that are on the cusp of Europe. But they're just not quite doing it. And actually, at the minute, of course, sat in 14th position. So Oliver Glasner's having a hard time at the moment. You've got Mark Gahey, who could be leaving. So you've got your manager and your captain that could be leaving. I think that they actually might finish a little bit lower than where the bookies have predicted them now. I could see it being maybe a 14th, 15th, similar to a Fulham situation, really. But it's one of those, isn't it? It's one of those, a good January, and you could also see Palace in the top 8/9 sort of region. So a very interesting window now for Palace, but I don't feel as though the bookies are far off that. I actually think they could be a little bit lower. Now then, we have got Bournemouth and Everton. So Bournemouth were predicted to finish 12th. Currently sat in 15th. And I feel as though 12th was only given to Bournemouth due to the summer. And obviously they lost a lot of key players with Kirkez, the Ukrainian guy who I completely have just forgotten his name of. Anyway, they've also got Dejan Huijsen. They've got Bournemouth like to get difficult names, right? And that's what they've done. But Huijsen has obviously gone to Real Madrid. They also lost Kepa in goal, even though he was only on loan. So they lost a lot of key players for me. And that's probably why the bookies had them to finish in 12th. That, it's going to be a season to bounce back. But early signs were they look a really good team still. And of course, I just feel it's like the manager, he's such a good manager and everyone's a massive fan of his. But Iraola's just not been able to get it going so far this season. And as you can see, they're sat in 15th position. Now, do I think they'll finish higher than that? Yes, I can see Bournemouth finishing strong. But it's all about how they replace players. They seem to have done a good job with the defenders, just about doing a good job. The forwards are where it's going to be more interesting. Of course, Semenyo heavily rumoured to leave the club in January. If that is the case, you have to recruit well and you have to get a good player in to replace him because Semenyo is such a big part of Bournemouth. So that's going to be very interesting. I do feel as though the bookies actually might get that one near enough nailed on. I'm going to go for 10th to 12th in my opinion to see where they finish up. Just based off the start of the season, it was so good and then it's gone so poor. We'll have to see. As for Everton, now, bookies predicted 11th, actual position 12th. I actually think Everton might go on to finish 11th place. And it's going to be one of those seasons for Everton fans where it's not really that exciting, in my opinion. They might get a cup run with the FA Cup, which could be good. And obviously, they've got a few exciting players with, obviously, Ndiaye, Grealish, Dewsbury Hall. I know a few were injured, etc. Tieno Barry, he was someone who I was very, very excited for at the start of the season. And it's not worked, but it hasn't sort of like torn up trees, has it? So Everton, for me, will probably finish exactly where they are in the bookies prediction, and that will be 11th place. It could be one of the only ones the bookies get nailed on exactly. And in the new stadium, positive times, exciting times. We'll have to see how they get on in the second half of the season. But if we're going to go off the first half, I think 11 is absolutely nailed on, which wouldn't be a bad thing, would it? It wouldn't be a bad thing. A few Everton fans I saw were hoping for Europe, but ultimately the expectation is 11th, 10th, hopefully break into the top half, but then build on it for the next season. Forest and Brighton. So starting off with Nottingham Forest. Now, the bookies predicted them 10th. A lot of people had them finishing a lot lower. And bear in mind, this was also the same last season. They completely defied expectations last season. This season, the bookies have gone sort of in the middle, sat on the fence a little bit. And as you can see, so far, they've got it horribly, horribly wrong. Now, Forest, for me, have made a lot of errors in the Premier League this season. The fact that they're on their third manager, I put a TikTok out the other day saying their second manager. Someone said, no, it's their third manager, of course. Nuno, Ange, and Deitch. Gee, what is going on at this football club? Because first of all, Ange Postecoglou, in my opinion, should have been given more time. It's a horrible start, don't get me wrong, but he should have been given more time. He's a manager that needs to implement his system, show his players in that system, needed time. They've now got Sean Dyche in. And I've just watched Villa versus Forest at the weekend. It was a demolition job. It's part of it is the fact that Villa are now a very good team and are able to sort of deal with that low block and breaking it down. But also the fact that Forest just look hopeless. So, they're never finishing 10th in my opinion. They might even go on to their fourth manager, which could, I think, be a record for most managers in a Premier League season. So I need to have a check on that. Let me know in the comments if you know that one. But 10th place. Never happening. I think Forest have a real chance of going down this season. From what I saw in that last game, if they get players like Elliot Anderson, who, by the way, was not good against Villa, but if he does make that move to a Manchester United, a team like that, they're not going to be left with many, many great players. And Sean Dyche is a great manager, a great man management, motivator sort of manager. But tactically, I don't think he's got what it takes to keep Forest in this league, especially when you look at the teams like Leeds that have got their tails up, they're fighting for their lives. Sunderland, another team that are right up there. They have no signs of coming down the table. So who's going to go down with Wolves and Burnley? You're looking at West Ham, Forest. They're the sort of teams. Will Forest have the minerals to stay up? I'm not sure, but the bookies have got that one horribly, horribly wrong. Now, moving on to the Seagulls, moving on to Brighton, a bit similar to an Everton, to be fair. I think they've got this one nailed on, realistically. They've predicted 9th. They're currently sat in 10th. Brighton have the capability to go and beat any team on their day. It's just that some days it's their day and some days it's not their day. In all fairness to them, they've got a fantastic home record, so that home form is what I think will sort of propel them into that top half position. Away from home, a little bit more shaky. So Brighton at 9th position, they're, as I say, currently sat in 10th. I think that is such a safe pick from the bookies, and it makes a lot of sense. They're never going to be in any risk of relegation. The club is run fantastically. It's all about them now getting a good group of players together, being able to keep that good group of players and making a push up the table. But this season, can't see it. They've got a very young manager, exciting manager in Hertz there. I think give him a few more seasons to build, and eventually we could be seeing a Brighton attempt on the top 4, but just not at the minute. All right, then, here we go. Aston Villa and Newcastle. Wow. I mean, Villa will start there. Bookies predicted Villa to finish 8th. Actual position currently is 3rd, joint 2nd. I nearly put joint 2nd, but I thought, okay, we are 3rd. Ultimately, I could see why the bookies predicted this. Off the pitch in the summer, it was all sorts of issues for Aston Villa, whether it be the fact that Villa can't spend due to PSR, or whether it was this player doesn't want to join Villa. Take Marcus Rashford, for example. He wanted Barcelona and that's it, which is fine. Now, Villa realistically started this season really poorly as well. You know, no goals in their first 5 games. And on the surface, it looked very negative. Very, very negative. But what it actually has shown now, we've now sort of seen this progress, is that the reason for that is 2 things, in my opinion. It's Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers being out of form and just really not clicking for them. And also the fact that Villa just needed a little bit more time to really bed in as a team. But there's also a few clean sheets. I think 3 clean sheets in those first 5 games. It showed that Villa were prepared to be a good defensively solid team and work on the attack. So that is what's happened now. Villa look an absolutely unbelievable side at the minute. Unai Emery has got this team playing so well. Are they in the title race? It's a tough one. What I've come to find is obviously you don't fully understand this until it is your team. Now, Manchester City and Arsenal, they are the 2 teams that Villa are up against in this title race. They just don't lose. Every single game, and as a Villa fan, you're used to having that sort of like, okay, we've lost this game here, but it doesn't matter. Every loss matters. Every win matters. A draw is killer. For example, Man City, Chelsea the other night, absolutely killer for Manchester City in the race. So I don't think Villa are going to be consistent enough to win the title, be in that title race towards the end of the season. But ultimately, I think Villa are nailed on for top 4. And that's a great achievement. So they will, very far exceed the bookies' predictions. Because I know it's only 4 places, but the sort of significance of those 4 places are huge. So credit to Unai Emery. What a job he is doing. And Villa now looking like the team we saw when they first got to the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. Really, really solid. As for Newcastle, bit of an interesting one, Newcastle. So currently sat 1 place behind Sunderland, which I know Newcastle fans, if you're watching this, I know that's going to absolutely pain you. But it's a strange one. Bookies predicted Newcastle to finish 7th, which I don't think is actually going to be too far off where they finish. Main reason for me is balancing the Champions League. We saw that I know they had the group of death. So I'm not going to sit here and say Newcastle shocking as if they never qualified. They had a very tough group last time they were in the Champions League. But with the additional games in the Champions League this season and the high likelihood that Newcastle will qualify because of the way the structure is, I feel as though that's probably fair, 7th place, because as good as Newcastle are, and I really do think Newcastle are a great team, these 2 teams here, Villa and Newcastle, in my opinion, if you're a neutral Premier League fan or you don't really follow a team because you've got an EFL team, you've got to be rooting for these 2 teams because they're giving it such a good go. Credit to Eddie Howe as well. He is doing a fantastic job. Heavily linked with Manchester United, though. I'm sure we'll get onto them in a minute, but heavily linked with that job. Ruben Amorim sacked literally this morning when I'm filming this. But Newcastle are going to suffer because of the Champions League, and that's why I think they're not going to get it again this season, but they are going to falter off. You've got Chelsea, you've got Liverpool, Villa, all of these teams who are probably in a better position to go and get it, and that's the reason why. I look at Newcastle's squad, it's very good, but the depth is never that great. I've never looked at their squad and thought, with a few injuries, they'll be fine. So that's why I'm going to go for Newcastle to be there or thereabouts where the bookies predicted, and I think that's a solid one. It is a solid prediction there, and I feel as though they will climb the table, but very slowly. Now then, the bookies predicted in 6th and 5th for Tottenham and Manchester United. Now, we were all sold a bit of a dream when it comes to Spurs. Obviously, Thomas Frank coming in looked to be the most perfect appointment possible. You've got a manager that has consistently done well in the Premier League at Brentford, a manager that's come from the EFL, not a risk though. You look at Kieran McKenna, for example, literally linked with the Manchester United job at the moment. That's a risk because has he ever really done it in the Premier League? Not really. Obviously got relegated with Ipswich. So Thomas Frank coming in made a lot of sense. How's he going to play? What's the system going to be? Look at the quality of players he's going to be able to work with. The transfer window was very solid. Players like Xavi Simons, Kolo Muani, for example, all of these players that you hear about in different leagues and think, God, Tottenham are in such a good position this season. Currently sat in 13th. It's just not happened for them. And it's crazy to me because it looks as though Thomas Frank is just like the fans seem to want him out. The more concerning part is that the players seem to want him out too. You've got Mickey van der Ven doing interviews with Gary Neville. The whole of Tottenham is just a mess. Remember, this is the team that finished 17th last season. Obviously, won the Europa League, so they're playing Champions League football. But my word, they have got so much to do. Is the answer getting rid of Thomas Frank? I don't think it is. I think he needs time. I think he needs time to come in. He's never managed at this level. That's what we could be seeing in terms of the decline. But I think he needs time. And the bookies' prediction of 6th, I would be astounded if Spurs can get back up there. Absolutely astounded. Their best bet is to go for a cup run, again, because I just don't see them having enough quality to actually go on and do things. I feel as though Spurs are a project. Spurs fans probably feel as though, we should be in the Champions League. Look at our stadium. Look at the finances we've got, the revenue we make. But ultimately, Archie Gray, Bergvall, all these signings like this, even Matthias Tau to an extent, they are for the future. And ultimately, I feel as though it's costing Spurs now. Because look at Bentancur and Paulinho. 2 decent players. Don't get me wrong. Villa's midfield is better. I feel as though Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool, even Newcastle, Manchester United. Okay. I'll take the Manchester United shout back. But I've just given you 6 clubs there that have a better midfield than Tottenham. So I feel as though it's a bit of delusion from the Spurs fans, coupled with the fact that Thomas Frank's having a tough time. I think Spurs will finish 9th place there or thereabouts, and that'll be a good season from where they are now, in my opinion. All right, then, moving on to Manchester United. Bookies prediction 5th, currently sat in 6th. This is such a strange one. As I'm filming this, Ruben Amorim has just been sacked from Manchester United. He made a few comments in his last press conference that were very damning, to be fair. He wanted to be the manager, not just the head coach, but accepted a job as a head coach. So I like Ruben Amorim. I've tried to be supportive of him, knowing the sort of difficulties that they do have in terms of ownership, etc. I'm sorry, but if you sign a contract as a head coach and you're trying to now be a manager, you knew what you signed up for, plain and simple. But Manchester United, actually in 6th, I think that is a very solid for Manchester United. I feel as though just because they signed Mbeumo and Sesko and Cunha, that doesn't just mean they're going to finish in the Champions League. And I feel as though, even though the number 1 selling shirt in the world last season, which is mental that Manchester United are still that big, it just shows they are the biggest, if not the biggest club in the world. Now, it doesn't automatically give them Champions League because they signed a few decent players. The squad needs an overhaul, and we're beginning to see that. And you're beginning to see players like De Ligt, for example, come through. Maguire, him come through. You've got Cunha who's coming through, and Mbeumo coming through. Bruno Fernandes has been a consistency since the start. Realistically, he's been very good. Ahmad, he's another player that's beginning to now come through. So the system is there. Should Manchester United have sacked Ruben Amorim? Absolutely. Should they have done it now? In my opinion, no, I don't think they should have. Now, it's not him walking away. They have sacked him. I think it could be a mistake. I think it could be a mistake because of who could come in and actually change the situation. I'm not sure who it could be. In terms of where they'll finish, obviously at the minute, it looks as though the bookies are there or thereabouts, pretty spot on. I can see Manchester United having a bit of a fall off now. I feel as though Manchester United will end up finishing more towards the mid-table region, just because I feel as though Manchester United is such a hard job, and you had a manager that looked, in my opinion, like he was beginning to crack it a little bit, and you've sacked him. Could be a mistake, could be the revolution they need. It could completely change Manchester United, so we'll have to see. But for me personally, Up until this morning, I'd have said the bookies have got it there, there or thereabouts, pretty spot on. As of now, can't see them finishing as high as 5th, even where they actually are in 6th. All right then, Chelsea. Bookies predicted 4th, actual position 5th. I think they're going to actually finish where they are now. I think Chelsea are nailed on for 5th, which means I think the top 4 will be Arsenal, Liverpool, City, and Villa. Not in any particular order. I'll get to that in a minute, but I just think Chelsea don't have enough. Even with another manager coming in, and it looks as though Leon Rosenior is going to be the man that does come in, he could do a good job. He could do a decent job, but ultimately Chelsea's squad isn't good enough to compete. The 2 centre midfielders in Fernandes and Caicedo, that's one of the best midfield duos in the world, in my opinion. They're completely let down by Robert Sanchez, who is having a good season. Take nothing away from him, but I feel as though they could get an upgrade there. The back 3, not good enough. Fullbacks, Reece James and Gusto are decent. Cucurella's all right, but that's their problem. The goalkeeper, the defence, and they don't have a good enough striker, in my opinion. The wingers are good wingers, just don't seem to really work too well at Chelsea. Don't know what it is. And of course, they've got Cole Palmer, who is world class. Haven't seen it for a while, though. You've got to be honest. Cole Palmer has fell off a little bit. So I just think this one's straightforward. Chelsea, just not quite good enough to finish in 4th. I can understand why the bookies would put them 4th, just because when you look at it, okay, who is going to break into that top 4? As we've said, Man United and Spurs, they are below Chelsea in my opinion, so of course you're going to predict Chelsea there. I just don't think anyone anticipated how well Villa or a Newcastle could do to break back into the top 4. So I think it's a good estimation from the bookies to finish in 4th, and I can see why it was there. But realistically, I do feel as though Europa League and 5th is where Chelsea will sit. As for Manchester City, now, this is an interesting one. So the bookies predicted them to finish 3rd. They're actually in 2nd position. And realistically, they're going to finish either 1st or 2nd. I don't feel as though Villa have the capabilities to actually break into that sort of title race properly. So it's City or Arsenal, right? Now, and effectively, I feel as though City, I can see why they were put 3rd, because Pep had a bad season last season. And ultimately, with Arteta, it's pretty much, surely he's got to do it at some point, right? He's got to do it at some point. So I can see why you'd put Arsenal higher. But for me, Manchester City's start to the season is solid enough to show me. Bearing in mind, City always tend to finish the season strong. After January, when everyone sort of locks in towards the end of the season, don't be surprised to see City pick up 6, 7, 8 wins in a row and really start dominating this league. Now, Arsenal, in my opinion, they have to sort of make that gap as big as possible, as quick as possible. If they don't, Manchester City, the well-oiled machine of Pep Guardiola, the serial winners, will go and get it done. You've got players like Rodri, who could be in his last season. Bernardo Silva, the same. You've got players like Haaland, who will probably look to move on at some point, but seems pretty stationary at the minute and happy where he is. But you've got these players that are going to want to go and get revenge. Phil Foden, another one, playing really well at the minute. He's going to want to go and have a big season to help his team get the title. So bookies prediction 3rd, understandable. We'll get to Liverpool in a second, but understandable why behind Arsenal and Liverpool. And I think they will go on to actually win the league, in my opinion. And as we mentioned, Arsenal and Liverpool. So, Arsenal, bookies predicted them to fall short in 2nd. Listen, I don't think any Arsenal fan can complain about bookies putting them 2nd to start the season, because realistically, they're bottle jobs. And we've seen that all throughout. Now, it may be the case that they do go on and win it. I think Manchester City still will. But ultimately, Arsenal in pole position, they could go on and do it. It's one of those two. I'm not saying Arsenal have no chance. But Arsenal predicted to finish 2nd, understandably, with Liverpool and their summer that they had, and we'll get onto them in a minute. But I think their actual position will drop 1 from where it is now, and I do feel as though they will finish 2nd. They're a very good team. They are a very good team. The squad, the depth of it, when everyone is fit, they have got such a good team. You know, I really like the signing of Zubamendi in the summer. That has really done a lot of good for them. But, it's a strange one. I do also still feel that Thomas Partey at times can be missed. So we'll have to see how that goes on for the rest of the season. The issue for me, and if Arsenal's main summer signing, and I'll call him the main summer signing, Victor Gyökeres, if Gyökeres was firing on all cylinders, I would actually have no doubts that Arsenal would go on to win the league. But ultimately, they've signed a striker and it's not working. Victor Gyökeres, I don't care what anyone says, right? Victor Gyökeres looks awful. Victor Gyökeres, at 27 years of age, looks like he's never played up front before in his life. And you might think that's harsh, and you might say, well, off the ball he does this and off the ball he does that. realistically, he's not scoring enough goals. And he had 2 headers in the game against Villa. Arsenal won 4-1. Doesn't matter anyway. So obviously I watched the whole game in that regards for Arsenal, the full 90 minutes. 2 headers, should have scored at least 1. Doesn't even get him on target. So I feel as though Gyökeres could be the kryptonite for Arsenal. We're going to see Kai Havertz come back. You've got Gabriel Jesus who's coming back. We'll have to see who they go for. I'm also intrigued to see if Arsenal do get into the market in the January transfer window, if they do strengthen in any areas. I'm not sure where it would be, maybe left wing, but ultimately Trossard seems to be playing quite well. You've got Martinelli too. So it will be interesting to see where they finish. But realistically, I just think Manchester City will have too much, and Arsenal, Bookies' prediction of second, it's going to be second or first, a good guess for them. Now, moving on to the final team, we have got Liverpool. What has happened to this Liverpool team? I mean, it's such a rarity to see a big signing come in and make a big difference straight away. I think the example that everyone likes to give is look at Thierry Henry. It took him a bit of time to get into things, but eventually he became one of the Premier League greatest ever players. So, will it be good for Liverpool in a season's time? Probably it will. They'll probably sort things out. Will it be under Arne Slot? I don't think so. I think Arne Slot's time is running out at Liverpool. I think the fact that the Fulham result happened as it did, you got the 95th minute Gakpo winner, only for a Harrison Reed equaliser, and it just sums up the season for them. So I think they're going to actually finish in 3rd or 4th. I think it's going to be between Villa, Liverpool and Chelsea, and I think Villa and Liverpool are going to just very slowly pull away. And I probably feel as though if I take my bias out of it, Liverpool will probably finish 3rd. We'll finish 4th. And I'll be happy with that. I will be one happy man if that does happen. But as for Liverpool, I watched them play and it just looks so disjointed at times. And it looks like they've got no real idea. At times, they look unplayable. At times, they look like you could score 7 past them, like Villa did a few seasons ago. But in all seriousness, you've got Alisson and Van Dijk, solid. Szoboszlai, I cannot praise this man enough. He has been single-handedly Liverpool's best player, in my opinion, this season. He has been phenomenal. But they're the main ones that are still giving it a good go. You've got Isak, not playing well, broken leg, really disappointing for him. I'm sure he would have picked it up eventually. Mohamed Salah, really not having a good season. You've got Florian Wirtz, really struggled. Looks like he could be getting better now. But the reason why the bookies predicted Liverpool to finish first is the business. The reason why they won't finish first is the business. It's quite poetic, really, in my opinion, that is what's going to be the downfall for them. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens in January as well. Do they try and add a few more players? I'm not really sure what the best course of action for them is, but realistically, Salah's been pretty poor. They're missing Trent, and I don't care what anyone says, they're missing him. And they're also missing a goal scorer consistently in terms of Isak, Ekitike. Which one is it? Who's going to be starting? Who's going to be not? I know now that Isak's broke his leg, it's going to be Ekitike. Hopefully he can now start to begin on... well, not hopefully, I'm a Villa fan. Let's hope that they... fall off and Champions League's guaranteed to us. But as a Liverpool fan, you're now hoping Ekitike can come into this and really make that position his own. So Liverpool predicted to finish first, understandably, but will not get anywhere near it. Now, this is my overview of the season so far. So, surprise package, Sunderland. Really, really impressive. We touched on how good they've been, and I loved their recruitment. They gave it a good go with Xhaka and Mukiele and Gertruda. Like, they really went and got some great signings. Now, January is going to be huge for them. As I've said, I feel as though if a good January happens, they might even see themselves finish towards that top half mid-table position. So, fair play, credit to them. Really, really impressed with Sunderland so far. And then the biggest disappointment is got to be Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, as I said a moment ago, Thomas Frank coming in, you think that's going to give you some real solidity and really sort of do some good things for you. Just not been the case. The recruitment looked decent, but again, it's just not really transpired like that. So I'm going to be very, very interested to see what Spurs do in January. I feel as though a few moves here and there. Kulusevski can come back as well. He's going to give them a huge boost. I don't think anyone's talking about that. Kulusevski coming back, I believe in February, March time. Whether he gets up to speed very quickly, but he is one of the best players in this league. That is right. When he's at his best, one of the best players in the league. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens at Spurs there. But the biggest disappointments from my point of view anyway, because I had very high hopes for them under Thomas Frank, and it's just not happened. So moving on to the manager of the season so far, Unai Emery. The fact that Aston Villa are in the title race, credit to one man and one man only, and that is Unai Emery. Morgan Rogers out of form. Emery played him into form, did exactly what he was supposed to do. Same with Ollie Watkins. This man just gets it right. So Unai Emery, I cannot praise him enough. And for me personally, no bias aside, he's been the manager of the season so far. Of course, Arteta's doing well, don't get me wrong. But Unai Emery, for me, overachieving with the squad that he's got. Now, player of the season is difficult because I actually thought Erling Haaland has a good shout. You know, you've got Igor Thiago from Brentford that's doing really well. But I'm going to go for Declan Rice because not only is, of course, he's on the set pieces and he gets good assists on the corners, free kicks, etc. This man is a monster. He is by far the best £100 million plus signing in Premier League history. Really, really good player is Declan Rice. And in this Arteta system, it works so well. When Declan Rice doesn't play, I do feel as though they miss him. They've got enough squad depth to deal with when, he's not there and he's injured. But ultimately, player of the season, he hasn't scored the most goals. He hasn't got the most assists. But from watching a lot of football this season, Declan Rice, he's just such a good player. England are so lucky to have him, and so are Arsenal. And I think if they are going to go on and win the title, they're going to need players like Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka to be really, really playing their best football because they've got such a good defence. The midfield is now very solid as well. Up front is my question mark for them, but Declan Rice in the spine of the team, you can't go wrong. And so that is that then. A bit of a chilled out video. Just giving my two pence, whatever the saying is, on the Premier League this season. If you do enjoy content like this, let me know in the comments. Drop a like, subscribe, and stick around because I'm going to be doing the Championship. If you want me to do League 1 and League 2, I'll do it as well. But let me know in the comments, as I say. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. All the support is really appreciated. And I will catch you on the next one.